In this video we'll demonstrate how you can use a Viewbox control to implement a star rating control, which is a pattern that you see in a lot of web applications. So you can see here we have stars, and if I want to rate something 3 stars, I just tap on the third star and then all 3 stars are highlighted. You can see if I tap on the 4th star, then the 4th star, and the 4th star looks a little bit bigger because of some CSS that we've applied over here. So the value of this control right now is set to 2. So if I go ahead now and submit the data, I can see that in the debugger e.data submitted for this Viewbox is now set to 2. But if I were to now go and click, say, on 4 and then hit the submit button, you can see that the data submitted is 4. So basically this control here is acting like any other data control in a UX component, in that it has a set value and a get value method, and I can use the slider here to set the value. So if I go there, you can see that I'm setting the value to the number of stars that I want. So by dragging the slider around here, I'm actually executing set value methods on this star selector. So this here, if we go back to design mode, we can see that basically we have a Viewbox control, and the Viewbox control has a variable name called Viewbox1, so that's the value that gets submitted. And then we've also got our slider control, and then in the slider controls on change event, we're just simply setting the value of the Viewbox to the value that the slider has. So if the slider has a value of 1, we're setting the Viewbox to a value of 1. If the slider has a value of 2, we're setting the Viewbox to a value of 2. And when we set the Viewbox to a particular value, it highlights the appropriate number of stars. So if I go there, you'll see that we now highlight 3 stars. If we go there now, we're highlighting basically all 5 stars. And then the other thing to notice is that this control now is acting just like any other data control, in that currently the submit button is disabled because the UX itself is not dirty. But as soon as I tap on the Viewbox to set a value, the submit button now becomes enabled because the form is now dirty. So the key point here is that the Viewbox is in a sense no different than an input control where you could type in a value. It's just a different way of setting the value of a control. So in the next video we're going to go behind the scenes and show how a Viewbox control is used to implement this star selector. So we're continuing now with our video on the rating selector control that uses the Viewbox. And let's start off now by showing how you can add a similar control to your own component. So I'm going to go here to my UX component and go there and choose a Viewbox control, and I'll just call it rating. And then I'll open up the Viewbox editor, and then we have in the Viewbox editor you can choose predefined controls. So I'm going to go here and choose a predefined control here called star rating, and then go ahead now and run it, and you can see now we've got our star rating control over here, and everything is working without, you don't have to do any additional coding. You can see that if I were to go here and put some submit buttons over here, and then go to my server-side code, and the after dialog validate, put in a debug 1, now go over to working preview here. So there's my control. If I basically tap on it now, you'll see the submit button will go enabled, and then if I hit the submit button here and look in e.data submitted, there's rating and it has a value of 3. So this is now acting just like any other data bound control, but you'll see now there's quite a big gap between the rating control and the submit buttons. So let's go and fix that. So we'll go over to rating, and the default size of the Viewbox has got a height of 3 inches. Let's go change that to say 0.5 inches, and now when we run it, basically you can see now it looks a little bit more natural. So this is showing you how you can add this rating control to your own component very easily by using the pre-built control. In the next video we're going to actually delve into this at a very low level and explain exactly how this control was built. So we're going to talk about low-level Viewbox concepts that will help you understand the inner workings of the rating control. So we're continuing now to look behind the scenes at how the Viewbox control to display star ratings was constructed. So let's start out now and create a brand new Viewbox control. So we'll go over here and choose a Viewbox, and we'll just leave it as Viewbox number 1. And now let's go over to the Viewbox properties. So we'll set the data source on this Viewbox to a to data, and then we'll choose a JSON a static JSON object, and we'll go here and we'll say stars 0. So basically this Viewbox is now being bound to an object that has a property called stars, and this is going to be the number of stars that that the user has selected. So that's our first setting. And now let's go to the actual Viewbox layout, and we're going to just we're going to switch to the freeform editor, and we'll go here and we'll put in a div, and then inside the div we'll basically put additional divs with that contain each of the buttons for the first star, the second star, etc. But we're not going to actually use images, we're going to just use text. So I'm going to go here and say div and S1 and then slash div to close it down. But I want these divs, instead of to start each new div on a new line, I want them to basically display from left to right, and it was as if they were just sort of buttons in a horizontal list. So I'm going to go here and say style and then display, and then I'm going to choose inline block. So basically there's my first button, and if I go here now and copy this out 5 times and then change this from S1 to S2, S3, S4 and S5. So these are just proxies for 1 star, 2 star, etc. So now let's go ahead now and run this, and you can see because we have the inline block, the divs, instead of showing up one after the other, are showing up from left to right. So at this point we've got something that is displaying these proxies for the buttons, but there's no real functionality built into it yet. So the next thing that we're going to do is basically go to our layout here and add in A5 item attributes. So I'm going to go over here and say A5-item equals, and I'm going to just say star click colon 1. So basically this is an item, and I'll go and define the item next, and I've set the item attribute to 1 to tell me that I've clicked on the first star. So now I'm going to take this and then copy this out to all of the other buttons. So let's go there, paste that in, and paste that in, paste that in, and go there and paste that in, and then I'm going to go here and change this from 1 to a 2, and then a 3, and then a 4, and then a 5. So now I've defined these items, but I haven't yet gone to the actual items control and defined star click. So let's go now over to items and add a new item, and we'll call it star click. And then in the onClick event handler, we can just alert IA, which is the item attribute. So if I go now and type alert IA, then when I go now and I run this component, and I'll just call it demo. So now when I run the component, oops, I got an error here, so let's go and fix that. and we'll pick this up in the next video where we fix this error and then continue with our demonstration. We're continuing now with our in-depth view of how the Viewbox was constructed, and in the previous video we had just gotten an error, and that was because I had misspelled the name. So you can see in the layout here the item is called star click, but here when I defined the item I spelled the name incorrectly. So let's go here and type star click. Go ahead now and run the component, and so now if I click on the item you can see that we get the alert that tells us what we clicked on. So now what we want to do is make it so that when you click on one of those buttons, the button turns red and all the buttons before it also turn red. So let's start out by making the buttons bigger. So we'll go over to our Viewbox, and we'll basically give each of these buttons a class equals, and then we'll go here and we'll just set the class to say star, and then let's do this for all of the buttons. So we'll go there, and then now we'll paste this in on for everybody, and now we'll go over to the CSS tab and we'll define what this class selector star looks like. So we'll go here and say star, and we'll make star into something. Let's go here and say that star has border solid 1 pixel blue. So now we get sort of a bigger target. We'll give it a padding of say 5 pixels, and we'll give it a background color of white, and then we'll set our pointer, our cursor to a pointer. Okay, so now basically the buttons will sort of look a little bit easier to click on. Now what we want to do next is define a class that will be applied to the button that you click on and to all of the previous buttons. So let's go back to our CSS now and define another class here called selected. So this is going to be dot selected, and we'll go here and we'll say that if it's selected we want the color to be red and the background color to be say yellow. So now we've defined a selected class, and now the goal is to basically apply this selected class to all of the buttons that to the button that was clicked and all of the buttons that that are prior to that button. So the way that we are going to do that is by adding code into that item that we defined. So let's now take a look at the code that we need to add to the on-click event for this item over here. So here's our on-click event. Oops, I'm in the wrong component here, so let's go back to demo here. So here we are in our on-click event, and in the on-click event over here we don't need to do this alert anymore. But what we're going to do is we're going to let me just paste in this code. So IA is the item attribute, and this is going to be equal to either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 depending on what button you clicked on, but it's a string, so we need to convert it into a number. Then recall that basically we based the we set the data source to an object that has a property called stars, which is a numeric field. So if we go back to our item here, we can see that in the on-click event this .data is available to us, which is the data that this Viewbox is based on. So we're going to go here and set this .data.stars equal to the number. So basically we're storing inside the data object the number of stars that the user just clicked on, and then we're going to basically go ahead and call the refresh. So having done this now, we're still not there yet. So you can see that even though we've added that code, when we click on these buttons nothing is happening yet. So let's pause now and pick it up in the next video to see how we actually now set the class on the selected button to be the selected class. So we're continuing now with the video, and now our goal now is to make the Viewbox display the correct class name on the button when it's clicked. So I'm going to go back to my Viewbox properties here and then go over to the layout. And now what I want to do is I want to basically make sure that we apply this class of selected to the button that was clicked and all of the prior buttons. So I'm going to just go here, I'm going to just copy in some code here. So I'll just copy in some code onto my clipboard here and then paste this in on star over here, and then paste this in. So basically what this code is doing here is it's saying that this first div is going to have a class of star, and then in addition, if stars is greater or equal to 1, then we're going to also basically emit this word selected, which will add the selected class to the list of selected class attributes. So if we go now and we run this and we click on the first button, that button should now go yellow basically. So if I click on the button, you can see that the button went yellow. But if I click on the second button, nothing happens because or at least nothing happens to that second button because we haven't yet now taken this code and copied it to all of the other controls. So let's go now and paste that in, and then paste that in again, and paste that in again, and one final time, and then go and change this from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and 5. So just to recap here, what's going to happen is when I tap on the button, the event handler for star click is going to fire. That event handler is going to set the object, the data object, to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. And then what we're going to do over here is we're going to basically look at the value in that stars object, and if it's greater or equal to 1, then we're going to emit the word selected, which sets the class name to star and also selected. So let's go ahead now and try this out. So in there, if I click on the first star, the third star, the fourth star, etc. So basically now we've got the sort of the bones of the star selector working, and now all that we need to do is replace these boxes with those images, which we'll show how to do next, and then continue with enhancing it so that the Viewbox actually returns the correct value. So let's actually focus on the value that the Viewbox returns. So I'm going to just go underneath this Viewbox here and go over to button, and in this button code I'm going to go here and say in the onClick event of this button, I'm going to go and say var val equals and then dialog.object.get value, and the control I want to read is Viewbox 1. And now if I go here and say alert val, we'll be able to see what the value on the Viewbox is, and what we'll see is that the value on the Viewbox is not being set. So if I go there and click on the fourth button, then I click on the value, I would like to see 4 show up over here, but it's not showing up. So let's go back now to our Viewbox, and then in our template, in addition to setting an A5 item, let's also go here and say A5-value equals 1, and then we'll repeat that for each of the other buttons. So I'll go there and do that, do that one more time, and then a final time over here, and now go and change these. So this is going to be 2, 3, 4 and 5. So go ahead now and let's run this now. So we'll click on the fourth button and now hit the button, and you can see now basically the button now says 4. So by setting a value attribute, an A5-value in the template, in the Viewbox layout, we've now basically said what value this Viewbox control itself, this whole Viewbox control returns, and we can now use the get value method on the Viewbox. So let's pause now and show how we set the Viewbox to display stars. So we're continuing now discussing how to make a rating selector using a Viewbox, and our next goal is to replace these dummy buttons that we have over here with real stars. So let's go back now to design, and I'm going to go into the Viewbox layout here, and I'm going to paste in some SVG that I obtained by going into a drawing program. So here is some SVG code that I obtained. I actually got this by going into an online SVG editor and then copying out the code. So I'm going to just run this so we can see how this SVG renders. So we'll go ahead now and run this, and we can see there's the SVG rendering over there. So this is what that SVG looks like. So we're going to go now and replace these buttons S1, S2, S3 with that SVG. So I'll go back now to my Viewbox, and I'm going to copy this SVG onto the clipboard over here. And then what I'm going to do is go to each one of these divs. I'll basically go there and press enter over there, and then another enter so it's easier to read, and then just simply paste in the SVG. And then I'm going to pause now while I repeat this for all of the other buttons. So I've now pasted in the SVG for each one of the buttons, and I've tidied up the HTML a little bit. So now let's go ahead and preview it. So there you can see now we see buttons, we see the stars instead of the text. So now let's go and start modifying the CSS. So the first thing that we're going to do is get rid of that blue border, and then we're going to go to the CSS and basically set the fill on the selected class so that the fill of the star gets set to yellow. So let's now go and replace the CSS now with some new CSS, and now what we've got is we've changed the selected fill now to be gold, and we've said that when it's not selected, the fill is just this sort of grayish color over here. So now when we go and run the component, we can see that the unselected stars have this sort of gray background, but when I click on a star, basically the fill now basically goes correct. So now we're getting closer and closer to our desired goal. But one of the things that we'd also like to do is make it that when you tap on a button on a star, it selects that number of stars, but if you tap on it a second time, it deselects, it selects nothing. So we can do that easily by going over to our Viewbox again, and then going over to our item, to our on-click event. And in the on-click event, we can go here and we can just add in an additional line of code after we get the number that the user tapped on. And we can say that if the number matches the current number that is stored in the stars object, just set it to 0. So we'll go ahead now and let's try running this. So now if I click on this fourth star and now tap on the fourth star a second time, we should have gone back to 0. So let's go and see why that didn't work. Okay, so my code is wrong. This should have been else over there. So else do that. So let's go ahead now and then go ahead and look at this. So tap on it a second time, and now we go back to unselected. So at this point we basically largely achieved our goal, but there is further optimization that can be done, and in the next video we're going to talk about how this component can be further optimized. So we're continuing now with our discussion of how to build a rating selector using a Viewbox, and we've essentially got a working rating selector right now, but it's not behaving identically to the rating selector that you get when you use the built-in control that you can get with when you go to the Viewbox editor and you select the built-in sample Viewbox over here. You choose the star rating editor. So the differences that you can see when I go to the the built-in control, you'll see that when I tap on a button, the particular star that was selected is a little bit bigger than the other stars. And also when we go and we look at the actual template, we'll see that the template is not using the star value that we were using in the template that we built in the tutorial. It's using the special value here called square bracket temp dot value. So square bracket temp dot value is the actual value that the Viewbox itself is being set to. So you can see that the view, remember that we used the A5 dash value to set the value that the Viewbox will return, and so this special construct here is a way of referencing the value that the control, that this whole Viewbox control has been set equal to. You'll see also that in the data source, that previously we had the data source set to an object that had a property called stars. We no longer do that. We just have an empty object here with no data in it, because we're not going to actually use the stars data object anymore. Instead, we're just using the entire value that the Viewbox has been set to with this special construct here. So this square bracket temp dot value is the value of the Viewbox. Then the next thing you'll notice is that if we go to the items, there's no longer an on-click event. There's no event handler code in the on-click. All that we've done over here is we've made sure that the item is marked as selectable, and then what we've done is we've said that when this item has been selected, that that the class that will be applied to the selected item is actual star selected. And if we go now to the CSS, we see that actual star selected has set the stroke, which is basically the outline of the star, to gold as well. So this is what gives the star a slightly bigger appearance when it's been clicked on. And then finally, in the Viewbox layout, the actual code that determines what class is being applied to the star is based on, now, as I mentioned previously, the square bracket temp dot value, as opposed to the star property in the data object, because the data object now doesn't actually have anything in it. And then the final thing that we did was we went to the Viewbox layout, to the Viewbox properties, and we've said allow deselect. So we've turned allow null on, and we've also said allow deselect, and that's what gives us the ability to select an item by clicking on it, and then to deselect everything by clicking a second time. So in the version of the rating selector that ships with the control that you get in the Viewbox builder is a little bit different than the one that we built in the tutorial, and the differences are as explained now in this video. So we're not using any properties in the data object. And then the key difference here is that in our template here, we are referencing this temp dot value property. So what we've shown in this video is a behind the scenes look of how the Viewbox was built in order to display values and get values. But actually there's one final thing that I need to point out, and that is when we go back to the Viewbox events, we can see that we've also basically gone to the on select complete event here and put in a this dot refresh. And so let's pause now and pick this up in the next video when I explain why we did that. So we're just continuing now with our in-depth look at how the rating selector was built, and we're explaining why in the on select complete event we're doing a refresh, which causes the Viewbox to repaint. And the reason that we do that is so that the following pattern will work correctly. So we showed in one of the videos how we can do a get value, but we can also do set value. So let's go back here and put in a button, and we'll go to the code on this button, and this button will do a set value on the view box. So dialog.object.set value, we want to set the value of the view box, and we'll just arbitrarily set it to a value of say 4, and then go ahead now and take this out. So now when we run this code over here and we press this button, we can see that basically the view box is displayed, and all the correct stars are highlighted. But if we were to go back to the view box here and take out this event, so we'll do that there and go ahead now and hit the save, and then go over to working preview and then hit the button. You can see that what happened now is only the button that was selected is highlighted, because the view box itself hasn't been repainted. So when I click this button, this item was selected, then the on selection complete event fired, and by just doing a refresh on the view box we cause it to repaint with all these buttons selected over here. So what we've shown in this video is how the view box becomes a very powerful control for building custom control types. In this case we've built a custom control which is a rating selector, which can be used to set the value in a field, and it's just like any other control, just like an input control that has a get value and set value property. So if I were to use data binding in this UX component, and I were to bind a field in the database that has a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, I could bind it to this control, and then the view box would be used to display the value in the control. So thank you very much for watching.